Welcome to A Course in Miracles, where you'll discover health and well-being through inner peace. Your host is Eloisa Ramos, EFT master and author of Beyond Self-Esteem, Discovering Your Boundless Self-Worth. Using EFT, the Ramos clearing technique, and the principles of A Course in Miracles, you'll learn how to open your mind to healing and to all that is inherently yours: deep fulfillment, vitality, joy, and inner peace.
Hello, my name is Eloisa Ramos. I am happy to welcome you to today's program. Stuck in a fearful conflict process because what you want conflicts with what you do? We are continuing with sections 6 and 7 of Chapter 2 of A Course in Miracles. Today, we look at the process of conflict and how it implies a divided or split mind, and how fear underlies that. We also want to understand the process of correction given to us on page 30 that resolves conflict. But first, I'd like to start by reviewing a bit from our last program titled, Is Freedom from Fear Possible? Is It Healing? And for those that are new listeners, you can find the links to all of my programs in chronological order on my website, healingwitheft.com, under the tab titled Media with Eloisa Ramos. In our previous program, we looked at level confusion and the belief in magic. When there is level confusion, we are confusing other levels with our mind, which is the only causal and creative level. So, for example, we will misperceive someone else's behavior as the cause of our fear or suffering. We will then seek externally for resolution and relief. It will not occur to us to look within in our thinking because we believe the cause is separate and outside of our mind. The belief in magic is level confusion, since it misperceives causal or creative power, believing that our body and other physical substances can create and are the cause of illness or healing. What is not recognized is that the belief in magic itself is what produces the physical symptoms. Also, when material substances are believed to be the cause of healing, the creative power that heals is really coming from the belief in the healing power of the substance and not from the properties in the substance itself. The belief in magic is demonstrated in what is termed the placebo effect in drug trials, where a group of individuals is given a drug and another group a placebo or a substitute that is free of the drug being tested. The results are often the same or better in the placebo group. This points to the power of belief as the cause of the results and not the material or drug itself. A Course in Miracle tells us that the miracle is the means that results in healing. Since the miracle adjusts level confusion, it corrects the error in our mind where the miscreation occurred. But a miracle comes from a mind that is miracle-minded, meaning it has accepted the atonement for itself and is not in fear. To accept the atonement implies that we recognize the mind as the only causative or creative level and that its errors or miscreations are healed by our decision and practice to love and forgive. So, in summary, the mind's thinking is the only creative or causal level. What is perceived at the physical level is the outcome or the effect of the thinking. Therefore, when we look at our behavior, we are looking at the physical level of our body and what it does. We are seeing the effects or the outcome of our thinking which includes all choices and decisions that we made. There are only two thought systems that our mind can take guidance from when it makes decisions. One is based on love and oneness, and the other on fear and separation. When we experience anything other than perfect love, happiness, abundance, and peace, it means we have chosen to believe in the ego thought system of fear and separation. And this is where we pick up and go to section 6, titled Fear and Conflict of A Course in Miracles. In this section, we are reminded that we are responsible, not just for our behavior, but primarily for our thinking, because this is the level we can exercise choice. Our thinking includes our judgments, interpretations, perceptions, and beliefs. And so we have the choice to believe anything we want, to perceive one way or another, to give a number of different interpretations to the same event, and to judge or not to judge what we perceive. By the time behavior happens and we perceive it at the physical level, our choices have already taken place. Page 29 of A Course in Miracles says, quote, "There is a confusion here that you would do well to look at clearly. You may believe that you are responsible for what you do, but not for what you think. The truth is that you are responsible for what you think, because it is only at this level that you can exercise choice. What you do comes from what you think. It is pointless to believe that controlling the outcome of misthought can result in healing. When you are fearful, you have chosen wrongly. Correction belongs only at the level where change is possible. Change does not mean anything at the symptom level, where it cannot work." Unquote. Most of us are willing to take responsibility for our behavior, and so will judge it right or wrong, not recognizing that what we do comes from what we think. It is often looking back that we make the judgment that what we did was wrong. But in the moment we did it, it seemed justified or not under our control. We can feel personally responsible for our quote-unquote wrongdoings, yet feel powerless to change that behavior. This happens because we are confusing levels, believing that the fear and suffering we perceived was caused by the wrong behavior, and not by our wrong choosing of unloving thoughts that led to the behavior. That all fear and suffering comes from our thinking will not be apparent to most of us. But if we observe our thinking and our choices to hold grievances rather than to forgive, we could see that the cause of fear and suffering is in our mind, and that it is our thinking that needs correcting. Page 29 says, quote, "The correction of fear is your responsibility. When you ask for release from fear, you are implying that it is not. You should ask instead for help in the conditions that have brought the fear about. These conditions always entail a willingness to be separate. At that level, you can help it. You are too tolerant of mind wandering and are passively condoning your mind's miscreations, unquote. When there is level confusion, being afraid appears to be involuntary. This is because level confusion disempowers our mind by seeing the cause of the fear separate from our mind and therefore not under our control. We are reminded here that the correction of fear is our responsibility because it comes from our willingness to accept and believe unloving thoughts which separate. When we choose the grievance over forgiveness, we are deciding for separation and fear. We are choosing to miscreate a world of fear and separation, and that is what we will experience. Page 32 says, quote, "Both miracles and fear come from thoughts. If you are not free to choose one, you would also not be free to choose the other. By choosing the miracle, you have rejected fear, if only temporarily. You have been fearful of everyone and everything. You are afraid of God, of me, and of yourself. You have misperceived or miscreated us and believe in what you have made." Miscreation and level confusion imply a fundamental conflict in seeing ourselves as separate ego bodies. When we suffer, we will not see we are doing it to ourselves, and so we blame someone else or something in us that we have misperceived as separate from us. However, this would also mean that when others suffer, we must be to blame. Here we see ourselves as guilty of causing others hurt and innocent in being hurt. We want to be guilty and we want to be innocent. We want to be powerless and have no control when attacked, but also want to be powerful and in control when we attack. This is insane thinking. Page 29 says, quote, "I do not foster level confusion, but you must choose to correct it. You would not excuse insane behavior on your part by saying you could not help it. Why should you condone insane thinking?" Unquote. When we are in conflict and we are wanting or willing to be separate, we are believing that separation is true. And our mind has to split in order to hold both the unloving thoughts and the truth. This results in fearful and insane thinking because we are wanting contradictory things that direct us in opposite directions. Since we will not make up our mind, we experience strain. Fear is a sign of strain because our mind is holding on to both loving and fearful thoughts that pull in opposite directions. And since behavior comes from our thinking, what results is incongruent or contradictory behavior. Page 29 says, quote, "Fear is always a sign of strain, arising whenever what you want conflicts with what you do. This situation arises in two ways. First, you can choose to do conflicting things, either simultaneously or successively. This produces conflicted behavior, which is intolerable to you because the part of the mind that wants to do something else is outraged. Second, you can behave as you think you should, but without entirely wanting to do so." Unquote. We're going to look at two situations where what we want conflicts with what we do. I got a call from a client. She was distressed and fearful at the situation she was in. She was a volunteer for a community group, and the head of the volunteer center had asked her if she could offer a car ride to a couple of women who also volunteered there. She agreed to do this because she wanted to be helpful. However, when the time came to give the women a ride, she experienced a lot of conflict and fear. She wanted to be helpful, but did not truly want to give these women a ride. She did not like them and was holding resentment and hate for one of the women because previously they had been close friends, but then the woman stopped talking to her. To have someone ignore her like that was unforgivable to my client. She was holding a strong grievance against this woman. So now that it was time to give the woman a ride, my client found herself in conflict, having agreed to do something she did not want to do. Her split mind wanted contradictory things, to help and not help. The part of my client's mind that disliked and hated these women was outraged at the idea of giving them a ride. In this example, my client's willingness to be separate from others is pretty clear. She was holding a strong grievance against her friend, and this put her in conflict with underlying fear. Our choice to be separate by choosing to hold grievances is the underlying reason for our conflict. This is because when we are in conflict, we cannot make up our mind about which thought system we want to be true. This implies that we have not made up our mind about what we want to believe we are: innocent and loving, or guilty and fearful. Here's the second example. My son had homework to do, but he wanted to tap with me because he said he did not want to do it. He knew he should do it because his goal is to graduate with a college degree, but the homework required abstract thought, and he said it took a lot of effort for him to focus on it. However, my son also had a strong objection to the fact that his homework was something he, quote unquote, had to do. To him, the having to do something implied it was not his choice, and so he felt coerced since he was seeing the control in the hands of a separate will, in this case his professor, who assigned the homework. There is level confusion here because my son is seeing the power of decision outside of him in his professor's hands. Because of the level confusion, my son was passively condoning miscreation, demonstrated by the strain and coercion he felt. He was willing to misperceive himself as separate and a victim to the will of his professor. He was denying power and freedom to his mind by failing to recognize it was his choice in the first place to enroll in the class. So, the part of his mind that felt like it had no control was resisting doing the homework. All conflict and trauma basically arises when separation and fear is present and we are identified with being a weak and vulnerable body that can be hurt and die. This is a denial of divine truth and splits our mind. What we experience then are negative emotions or energy disruption. When we test for energy disruption with muscle testing, we find muscle weakness. It is easy to see through muscle testing that there is muscle weakness when we lie and deny truth. Our energy system is disturbed by our own opposition to the truth of what we are. To believe in our wholeness and divine perfection only strengthens our energy system because it is in alignment with knowledge and spiritual truth, as long as we're not polarity reversed and are afraid of truth. Okay? The miracle, as an expression of the atonement, heals because it undoes the level confusion and heals the split mind. Our right mind is restored by our choice to choose love because this brings it in alignment with spiritual truth. This returns us to peace and undoes the energy disruption. To be conflicted is to deny love by choosing to believe that separation and fear are real. But even when we want to deny love, we can never do so completely, since that is what we are. It is impossible to deny truth completely. So, to choose to believe any fearful ego thought of separation has to split our mind and produce conflict. Page 30 says, quote, "Only your mind can produce fear. It does so whenever it is conflicted in what it wants. The first corrective step in undoing the error is to know first that the conflict is an expression of fear. Say to yourself that you must somehow have chosen not to love, or the fear could not have arisen." Unquote. So, once we experience fear, we can conclude that we were willing to be separate and must have chosen not to love. Page 30 gives us the process of correction that our mind can follow, and this will help us to accept the atonement and forgive our misperceptions and release the conflict. Quote, "First, know that this is fear. Fear arises from lack of love. The only remedy for lack of love is perfect love. Perfect love is the atonement." Unquote. The first step is to be aware or tune in to the fear when you are in conflict. Then remember that fear arises from a willingness to be separate or unloving. The remedy to correct our error is perfect love. Perfect love is the atonement, and when we accept the atonement, we accept that our mind is the only causal and creative level. So, what is showing up in our experience is a miscreation of our mind. And since our mind's miscreations are unreal, we can forgive them and let them go. It is very important to remember that all miscreations of the mind are unreal in order to truly forgive. Otherwise, we can end up shifting the blame from others to our mind. This will make it seem like we have forgiven others, but we have only shifted the unforgiveness to ourselves. Page 32 says, quote, "You have been fearful of everyone and everything. You are afraid of God, of me, and of yourself. You have misperceived or miscreated us, and believe in what you have made. You would not have done this if you were not afraid of your own thoughts. The fearful must miscreate because they misperceive creation. When you miscreate, you are in pain." Unquote. When we believe our miscreations are real, we will believe the ego thought system that holds the belief in separation is real. It is our belief in these thoughts that we miscreated that makes them real in our mind. And so we will be afraid of them, since they are all fear-based. All thoughts making up the ego thought system, however, are false and have no reality in truth. Our mind could not have made up the ego thought system without also knowing truth, since the ego thought system is the denial of truth. You can't deny truth unless you know truth. We use the ego thought system to misperceive God, others, and ourselves. It is like putting on blinders to pretend the truth of our perfect creation is not there. Page 32 continues, quote, "It has already been said that you believe you cannot control fear because you made it, and your belief in it seems to render it out of your control. Yet any attempt to resolve the error through attempting the mastery of fear is useless. In fact, it asserts the power of fear by the very assumption that it needs to be mastered. The true resolution rests entirely on mastery through love. In the interim, however, the sense of conflict is inevitable, since you have placed yourself in a position where you believe in the power of what does not exist." Unquote. Our true loving nature has never changed, because misperception and fear have no power to alter truth. Misperception can distort and cover our eyes to it, but truth remains as it is. It is through the atonement, which entails the practice of forgiveness and the choice to love, that the blinders of fear are seen for what they are: nothing. Any attempt to master fear would only support the idea that fear is real. Otherwise, why would it be a threat that needed to be mastered? Page 32 says, quote, "Nothing and everything cannot coexist. To believe in one is to deny the other. Fear is really nothing, and love is everything. It should be emphasized, however, that ultimately no compromise is possible between everything and nothing. Time is essentially a device by which all compromise in this respect can be given up." Unquote. So, we are in time to release all conflict and compromise. The basic conflict is between fear and love, between miscreation and creation. But miscreation is illusion, or nothing. So, the basic conflict is between nothing and everything. Yet, there can be no true conflict between what is unreal and what is real. Time, therefore, is available to us to see this truth. There is no conflict. Separation and fear are not real. We have never been separate from our source and creation. We want to compromise only because we value and want to hold on to our miscreations. But in time, we will see holding on to the conflict brings us only pain, suffering, and death. Sooner or later, we will choose to give up all compromise and choose only love, joy, peace, and eternal life. And with this, we conclude the program for today on conflict and fear. Join me next time as we continue with the study of the text from A Course in Miracles. Blessings to everyone.
For more information about EFT, muscle testing, working with Eloisa, and to download a free version of the Ramos clearing technique, visit www.healingwitheft.com.